We begin the program with House Democratic Whip Steny of Maryland. Thank you for being with us, Congressman.
Always good to be with you.
Republicans ran on slashing federal spending, and they're beginning to offer some details on scope and particulars. You don't like the spending cuts, or many of them I know, but give us an idea of some specific cuts and the effects that you think they would have.
Well, first of all, let me say that we heard the message, and we believe strongly we've got to get a handle on this deficit. It's unsustainable. We've got to cut spending. We frankly have to look across the board at revenues, entitlements, defense, discretionary spending. Unfortunately, what the Republicans are doing is looking at only one segment of that.
Which is discretionary.
Which is discretionary spending, which is about $450 billion of the $3.7 trillion.
Any particular cuts that they are making that you think will?
I think clearly they're looking at cuts in education, which are going to undermine what the president talks about investment. Every business leader I talk to says we've got to invest in education. China is, India is, Europe is. Our competitors are educating their young people so that they can be competitors in the international global marketplace. They want to cut, as I understand it, funds from programs which help a safety net for some of our people, whether it's nutritional programs,
They're going to cut the NIH budget?
I understand the basic biomedical research budget is in fact being cut. Now again, Al, I want to make it clear, as we talk, they have not put yet online the cuts that they're proposing. And the reason they haven't done so is because they thought they had an agreement, but that agreement fell apart. They had a very animated caucus this week, and as a result, we don't yet have specific cuts.
Obama said he is also going to offer painful cuts in his budget. It's going to come out of money. That's going to include reducing low-income energy assistance. It's going to include no longer a civilian pay parity with military. Are those going to be acceptable to you and your caucus?
I think we're going to have to look at them. Again, his budget doesn't come out until next week. So we're going to have to look at those. And some of the information I hear is they're going to be painful cuts. Women, infants, and children funding apparently is going to be cut. Some of the cuts that you just mentioned, low-income energy assistance cuts. They're going to be troubling, particularly in a very cold winter with a lot of snow. People are going to
So he may not get some.
Having said that, though, I think it is a recognition by the administration, which we recognize as well, that there are going to have to be some very tough decisions made. As you know, I've taken the position for the last year that we're going to have to look across the board. I applaud the two commissions that reported, which reported across the board focus and across the board fiscal discipline, financial cuts. I think that's going to be necessary. We need to get a handle on this deficit. The American people are correct. However, the Republicans have deluded, I think, the American people and themselves in believing that the cuts that they want to get can be taken from about 13 or 14% of the budget on which people rely. And you mentioned National Institutes of Health, which are looking at how to cure cancer, heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, chronic diseases that cost our nation very substantial amounts of money, and the investment in either preventing them or treating them or curing them are going to pay off in much bigger dollars. So I think in some cases the Republicans are being penny wise and pound foolish.
And Republicans say that, all right, if we want to have entitlements, the president has to lead on that. Should the president make some specific proposals on Social Security, say, and should that be tied to revenue increases also?
Al, I've said and continue to believe that the president, the Republicans in the House and Senate, and the Democrats in the House and Senate need to sit down and come to grips with how we deal with entitlements, defense spending, and discretionary spending, because the deficit is in fact
and not taxes.
And taxes. Excuse me. I'm glad you mentioned that. Revenues have to be a part of this package.
But should the president
tax reform needs to be a part of this
Should the president take the lead?
I think the president took the lead when he appointed the commission that has reported, the Bowles-Simpson Commission. I think the recommendations they made are very useful recommendations. That doesn't mean I agree with every one of them, but we've got to follow a formula similar to the recommendations not only of that commission, but of the Dominican Republic.
Do you think anything will happen seriously?
I hope so.
I know you hope so, but do you think that ain't gonna happen?
I think it can. I think that when I talk to David Camp, when I talk to Paul Ryan, when I talk to other Republicans, they believe action needs to be taken.
And they will not just say, we're not going to talk about taxes. They're going to...
At this point in time, they will say we ought not to be talking about revenues. They won't talk about revenues. But they know in the back of their heads, even if they don't articulate it, that revenues, as each one of the commissions headed up by Republicans,
right.
as the members, 2 of the 3 members, Republicans from the Senate, signed on to the commission report, which said that revenues have to be a part of this. So I think the answer to that question is that I think all sides understand that if you don't consider all of the options, including revenues, including defense, including entitlements, just focusing on discretionary spending, which is a relatively small part of the pie, but is a very visible part of the pie and lends itself to demagoguery, you will not solve this problem.
The business community says it wants corporate tax reform that reduces overall corporate taxes. Is that doable?
I think that the President said in his State of the Union now that we need to be competitive with the world. We have an agenda that's called the Make It in America agenda. I'm pushing it very, very hard. Make It in America, of course, means 2 things. A, we're going to succeed in America. We're going to have a brighter future. We're going to grow our economy and compete with the rest of the world. And it also means we're going to make it. We're going to manufacture it or grow it in America and sell it here and abroad. In order to do that, we're going to have to look at tax policy and regulatory policy. And to make sure that we have an environment, we've created an environment in which people can profitably make it in America.
So when you do corporate tax reform.
So the answer to your question is we've got to have a corporate tax structure that is in fact competitive with the rest of the world. One of the things we have to do, in my opinion, is look at all the extraordinary complexity of our tax code, the loopholes that have been put into it. I think we ought to reduce preference items very substantially and bring rates down.
So therefore, it would be revenue neutral. You would not have a corporate tax cut.
I talked to a corporate leader the other day. I said, look, they mentioned corporate revenue neutral. I said, look, on the one hand, you have said our deficit is a real problem. Right. On the other hand, you say you want to reform the tax code and have revenue neutrality. The two are not compatible. In order for us to bring down the deficit, we've got to cut spending, but we've also got to increase revenue. We've got to increase revenue because right now we're at the lowest level of tax collections of revenues we've been in over half a century. Let me just make sure I have this right then. Corporate tax reform that doesn't lose revenue. Is that your position? I would be for tax, yes. I think neutrality in that sense.
Congressman Hoyer, thank you so much for being with us.